Eraserhead. Strange and surreal movie which takes place in a nightmarish industrial world. Filmed in eerie black and white and released in 1977, this experimental film marks the first cinematic feature by director David Lynch, where we follow a character called Henry, who lives in a run-down apartment in this strange, disturbing world. After learning that he has fathered a child with deformities, Henry takes on the duty of caring for his kid, where he discovers that the baby is so badly deformed it doesn't even resemble a human. In this uncomfortable and often disturbing movie, which relies heavily on audience interpretation, which has frequently left the movie to be debated and analysed. Oh, and there's also this creepy lady with a weird face who lives in Henry's radiator and sings to him. Because, David Lynch. So buckle up as things are about to get really strange, as we look into 10 things into David Lynch's ugly but brilliantly ugly masterpiece, Eraserhead. So let's check it out and try not to get too creeped out. Number 10, Eraserhead came to be because David Lynch was going to drop out of film school. A very young David Lynch had his sights on being an artist, particularly painting. However, at the tender age of 24, he got a scholarship for studying at the American Film Institute, where he did go on to study. But Lynch just wasn't feeling satisfied with the direction the course was going in and was contemplating leaving the institute. Well, clearly someone at the institution believed in Lynch and felt that he would make an amazing director, as he was offered the opportunity to make a movie based on a script that he had written or of his choosing, as well as be allowed to use the campus facilities for filmmaking and sets. So naturally, Lynch changed his mind about dropping out. But yeah, his filmmaking days could have ended there. That means no Elephant Man, no Blue Velvet, and no Twin Peaks. And a world without David Lynch making movies is a sad world indeed. Number 9, original movie idea. So when Lynch was offered the opportunity to make his own movie, it was pretty clear from the get-go that it was going to be one strange and surreal viewing experience, as well as being experimental and pushing the boundaries of cinematic norms. However, Lynch's original ideas may have been a little too far out, as his original script was called Garden Back, which is based on one of his previous paintings. Okay, the story for Garden Back is strange, so bear with me. From what I've read, it's about someone having lustful feelings over their neighbour, and that the lust that they have is represented in the form of an ever-growing insect. The AFI felt that Garden Back would have been too long for such a strange, non-linear script, so they weren't sold on the idea. However, the concept of lusting over a neighbour was incorporated into Eraserhead, and the idea of insects being a metaphor for human behaviour was also explored in Blue Velvet. Number 8, inspiration for Eraserhead. So after the AFI weren't exactly falling in love with Garden Back, Lynch then came up with the idea of Eraserhead, after having a daydream about a boy taking a man's head to a pencil factory. Which is a scene that does end up in the movie. Yes, Lynch definitely has a very unique mind. However, the AFI still weren't convinced, but eventually agreed to go with the Eraserhead idea after teacher and filmmaker Frank Daniel threatened to resign if Eraserhead wasn't given the go-ahead. Other than his surreal pencil factory daydream, Lynch got inspirations from the 1915 novella The Metamorphosis, which is a story about a salesman inexplicably waking up one morning as an insect. And like Eraserhead, it relies on observer interpretation. Lynch also took inspiration from an 1836 Russian story called The Nose, which is about a man's nose who leaves his face and goes on to live its own life. Lynch also explained that one time he opened up a Bible and just randomly read a passage that was in there, and that was also a creative influence for Eraserhead, but he just can't remember which passage it was. Lynch's daughter Jennifer has also shared some insights into the creation of Eraserhead, stating that her unexpected conception and the fact that she was born with clubbed feet are what led to the themes of fear of fatherhood and childbirth defects as seen in the movie. Number 7, it was a timely shoot. The idea of Eraserhead was conceived in about 1970. However, the movie didn't come out until 1977. That's a long time for a movie shoot. That's because Eraserhead's shoot was plagued with constant setbacks and delays, with the production having temporary shutdowns, with Eraserhead being a shoot that was years in the making. It was mainly due to funds and other monetary issues. When the AFI greenlit Eraserhead, they did so thinking that it would just be a short 29-minute film, but Lynch's original vision was way more ambitious and creative, with Eraserhead being far more than just a short college movie. The production had to be creative with finding ways to fund Eraserhead. Lynch got a paper round in order to bring in some money. Lynch's friend and production designer Jack Fisk and his wife Sissy Spacek would also donate to Eraserhead's production. A year before Eraserhead's release, both Fisk and Spacek worked on Carrie, so for all we know, if it wasn't for Carrie, there may not be an Eraserhead. Even the wife of Jack Nance, who played the lead role of Henry Spencer, donated her income from a waitressing job. So it really was a project that was being kept afloat by kind donations by those who believed in it. During one of the times the movie was shut down, Lynch even directed a short film called Amputee. And to get an idea of just how lengthy the production of Eraserhead was, in one scene we see Henry walk into his apartment. Although it took less than a second on screen, a whole year had passed between the cut of Henry opening the door and then walking into his room. Eraserhead sounds like it took a frustratingly long time to film. I mean, look at it this way. When the movie went into production, the world would have all been hippies and free love. And by the time Eraserhead came out, punk and disco were now a thing. Number 6, roof racks led to casting. So actor Jack Nance played the movie's main lead Henry, the character who we the audience follow in this strange and surreal nightmarish journey. Nance would actually go on to work on other Lynch projects such as Dune, Wild at Heart and Twin Peaks. However, when Nance first met up with Lynch to discuss the possibility of Nance playing Henry in Eraserhead, they weren't exactly seeing eye to eye. Apparently Nance wasn't really all that enthusiastic about starring in a strange student film, and was quite vocal about it, and how he didn't think he could be bothered with it. So Lynch ended the meeting, and as the two left the building where the meeting was taking place and stepped into the car park, Nance saw a car that had a roof rack, and commented on just how awesome the roof rack was, where Lynch informed Nance that it was his car. And Nance was really impressed with Lynch's choice of roof racks, and thus a spark was lit between the two, which would lead to Nance's casting. And yes, it was all down to the wonderful invention that is roof racks. Number 5, the famous hairdo was a bit much for the 70s. When it comes to Eraserhead, one of the most standout things about the movie is the character Henry's awesome hairdo, which sees all his amazing curls stand up on end. Just like everything else in the movie, it truly looks amazing and is out of this world. Lynch said that one of the great things about Nance's hair is that if you comb it upwards, it just simply stays up. But this also made some people nervous, as there was no other haircut like this during the 70s. Apparently one time when Nance turned up for filming, some of the crew said to Lynch, "You can't do that, it's too strange." Yes, people were literally freaking out over a hairstyle. Whenever out in public, Nance's hair would also gain lots of attention and draw in crowds, because people just weren't used to seeing such a hair display. So when driving to locations for filming, Nance would have to sit in the middle of the back seat, with two other people sitting on the other sides, to try and hide his hair, and to not draw attention. Lynch said the haircut was beautiful, as it went with Nance's body portion. And as mentioned, Eraserhead's shoot was long, literally lasting years. So Jack Nance had to put up with that hair for a very long time. Number 4, David Lynch is weird. So Eraserhead was filmed around California, which is interesting as usually when you think California, you think sunshine and palm trees, not the dark, bleak industrial world seen in Eraserhead. It was filmed at several locations owned by the AFI, including Greystone Mansion and some stables that weren't in use. While filming, Lynch also wanted to film a scene where Henry finds the remains of a deceased cat. Lynch rang up a vet and asked if he could have a dead cat. The veterinarian at first thought that Lynch was a nutcase, but then did end up giving him a deceased cat, where Lynch took the remains home and performed a dissection, out of curiosity to see what the cat looked like, where he said the organs had amazing colours. Although the story sounds grotesque, I don't think Lynch did this because he's ghoulish, but because he had a general fascination. As he puts it, he loves organic phenomenon. In a 1979 interview talking about the movie Eraserhead, we see Lynch at what looks like an industrial wasteland, where he calls the location beautiful, and that he sees beauty where others do not. Now, although operating on a cat's remains isn't to my taste and something that I would never do, I think that and his ability to see wonderment and beauty where others see ugliness is kind of an example of just how unique David Lynch is and how he thinks outside the box. I know the segment is called David Lynch is weird, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's okay, as one person's normal is always going to be another person's weird. It's just all about perceptions. Number 3. Cutting the movie to size. Eraserhead's original duration was nearly 2 hours long. However, a test screening led to changes. It goes without saying that Eraserhead's test screening was a disaster. I mean, after all, this was 1977, the year of Star Wars. People probably just didn't understand what this dreamlike surreal trip that is Eraserhead even was. Lynch put the poor reception of the screen test down to the volume of the soundtrack being too high and drowning out the movie. However, despite that, he still cut 20 minutes out of Eraserhead, bringing it down to 89 minutes. Some of these deleted scenes include the midwife of the infant baby, the infamous cat remains, and another scene involving a car battery. Over the years, some of the deleted scenes have made their way back into the movie in certain special home media releases. Interestingly enough, my DVD release of Eraserhead that I got a few years ago has the scene where Henry finds the cat's remains as the DVD's menu, which is fascinating. Number 2, David Lynch slightly reveals what Eraserhead is. It was a long time coming, but Eraserhead was released in March 1977 and made $7 million at the box office, which isn't bad for what is basically a student film. However, the film didn't get the best reviews from critics, with Variety magazine calling it, quote, a sickening bad taste exercise. Eraserhead was also accused of being pretentious. Needless to say, people just weren't ready for the film at the time. However, since its release, it's led to great debate and discussion from both fans and film analysts, and viewers in general who just want to know what the heck that was they just saw, with people dissecting Eraserhead and wanting to know what the movie really is about. Is it a story about coming to terms with parenthood? Is it a nightmare? A body horror? A spiritual journey? Or even an awakening? Well, the movie relies heavily on interpretation. David Lynch has said that most of the interpretations that he's read that people have made about Eraserhead have been incorrect. But he has offered some insight by calling it a strange comedy. So maybe we're not meant to take the movie too literal and serious and see it more as a black comedy. But I don't want to say too much, as I don't want to join the list of analysts who got the movie's real meaning wrong. Number 1, it grew success as a midnight movie. So as mentioned, Eraserhead wasn't exactly well received when it came out. However, the movie would end up gaining more of a fan following when it went on to become a midnight movie. Meaning certain cinemas played the movie at midnight, where through word of mouth, the movie increased in popularity. Another movie this famously happened to in the 70s was the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And it seems that other filmmakers were fans of Eraserhead too. George Lucas was so impressed with the movie, he offered Lynch to direct Return of the Jedi. It's gone on to become a movie that's seen as a unique work of art, getting great praise from critics and film historians. It currently has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 90%, and in 2004 it was recognised for being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant by the United States National Film Registry. Eraserhead is simply a movie that has to be seen to try and comprehend. It's literally an unnerving movie like no other. It's horrific but oddly beautiful at the same time. I saw it for the first time when I was 30, and it disturbed me and made me uncomfortable. And it's not a film that I will probably watch again. To me, it's the type of movie you'll only watch once. But after watching it, I was really glad that I did watch it. and I was thankful that I had this strange, once-in-a-lifetime movie experience like no other. Eraserhead is not going to be everyone's taste. There's just no getting around that. I see it as being a movie experience, in the same sense that 2001: A Space Odyssey is a movie experience. So if you're interested in the general craft of filmmaking, especially when it comes to being experimental and breaking away from movie norms, and as long as you're okay with being creeped out, then I say check out Eraserhead. You're in for a memorable cinematic ride. One that actually sticks with you for a long time after watching it. Anyway, I'm Minty, and remember what the lady in the radiator said. In heaven, everything is fine. See ya!